my first question to you would be, what's one thing that local authorities are focusing on right now that you think is actually perhaps less important than they believe is?
Each local authority is at a different stage in their delivery cycle. So what I wouldn't say is a particular approach is wrong, but certainly where Transport for Wales is proposing there ought to be more focus because of the stage that we're at with the EV transition is on street charging. So that's not to say that public subsidy shouldn't be spent in other areas, for instance, delivering chargers into car parks. But ultimately, we know that the next stage of the EV transition is going to really be affected and potentially successful, or not be as successful as we want it to be, if we don't get at home and near home charging nailed. And so ultimately, it's traditionally very difficult to deliver on street charging projects because of the interfaces with the public, as well as internal teams and difficulties in terms of available road space, pavement width and the like. But that's our focus area, not because it's difficult, but because that's probably the area where we can get the greatest gain.
Thank you for that. Now I just wanted to bring a focus slightly to delivery model, delivery reality. From what you see on the ground, what's the biggest bottleneck in Wales that is slowing down the charging infrastructure deployment today? I suppose if you could maybe share any particular nuances related to that.
I think the easiest way of describing what is at the top of my list in terms of headaches would be the difficulties in procuring services and preparing quality specifications, managing the expectations of the private sector in terms of timescales, what's actually involved in procuring those services and deploying them, and that being allied to relatively short funding cycles, which mean that a local authority has to be very quick and very agile in being able to move from having funding awarded to delivering schemes within timeframes that work from a funding perspective. So the greatest gain in my mind would be, and it's not an easy thing to fix, and it's not one solution that fits all by any stretch of the imagination, is to raise commercial awareness within the local authorities and think about how does that actually mean that we can move through those stages of procurement faster than we do. The faster we move through procurement, the easier that is, the more time that we've actually got to deliver, and that will then have positive impacts on outcomes, which is difficult to do if you're spending the majority of your time trying to procure. And so we've got multiple examples where that has had a significant impact on local authorities being able to deliver. It means that other business models have to come into play, but potentially that means that some of those less commercially advantageous sites don't get delivered in those contracts. And ultimately, to support the transition, we also need those less commercially attractive sites to be delivered at the same time.
No, absolutely. Obviously, LIBI does not apply in Wales. So what's one thing that England councils could learn from the Welsh approach to EV infrastructure delivery, in your opinion?
It's not one size fits all, but I think what we all need to do better is we need to share experiences. And I think the role of Transport for Wales within that is really important in Wales. So we are trying to pull the threads of, what has been successful, what hasn't been successful, what the obstacles are, what the challenges are to local authorities. And then because of our national focus, thinking about what interventions can be deployed across the whole of Wales for the benefit of all of those local authorities. So we can't do that without the support of the local authorities. I would hope to say that some of the work that they do, we're supporting really positively. And what we're also trying to bring to the table are the perspectives of the wider ecosystem and those private businesses as well. So I wouldn't say that we're unique in that regard, but it's kind of a case of trying to pull together as much as many perspectives as possible to have a successful means of being able to collaborate. And I think then it's coming up with mechanisms that make sure that we can share that information as widely as possible, and hopefully, use the mistakes or the problems that people have encountered previously and turn those into positives.
Fantastic. I think learning is the key, no matter where you're really learning from, whether that's England, Wales, Scotland.
But it sounds trite saying it, but it's absolutely, it's the thing that kind of builds us together. I think it's very easy because of the complexity involved to focus on the technical aspects of delivering schemes and making sure that you're adhering to the public charge point regulations and touch potential, and you name it. There's a technical area that we need to be cognizant of. But if you take away the technicality, these schemes don't get delivered without everybody being on board and pulling in the same direction. So it sounds trite, but it's actually really important.
Right. And if we look forward over the next 2 or 3 years, what will separate those local authorities that succeed in EV infrastructure rollout from those that fall behind?
Well, I think we're already seeing some fall behind, so I don't think it's even in a couple of years' time. I think what will possibly change the narrative is when elected members and members of the public start asking their local authorities about what they're specifically doing to support the EV transition, as EVs become more affordable and more prevalent on the market, and we're already starting to see that. So those local authorities that are already geared up and delivering will be in a better position to be able to support that and keep infrastructure in step with EV demand. And I think that's the really important thing. So not to go way beyond what that EV transition curves looks like, but to keep it in step, which means that only the right amount of infrastructure is being located in the right locations and the right quality. So those local authorities that are not starting on that journey, it doesn't mean that they can't catch up, but it's probably the eye of the hurricane at the moment, in a sense that there are those local authorities that are committed to delivering EV charging infrastructure and are doing really good things in that space, notwithstanding that they might be having some difficulties actually getting schemes delivered. But the aspiration is right and the ambition is right. Those local authorities that aren't in that space are probably not receiving too much pressure at the moment from external parties, which is pushing them forwards. But each local authority is on its own journey, so we're not here to preach to them to say that everybody needs to deliver it now, are we? But ultimately, it's about reflecting your voters' requirements, your residents' requirements, and the area that I can see that will quite significantly change is around on-street infrastructure. I think less so in terms of hubs, because that almost has a life of its own now from the commercial sector perspective. But I think anything at home, anything around trying to make planning and delivery easier for everybody involved really needs to happen, and that's where I can see in the next couple of years we ought to be seeing some significant change. Certainly my aspiration is that we get in Wales a lot more on-street infrastructure in the ground over the next couple of years, so that we've got more data to be able to use to be able to inform those other local authorities and those other organisations coming slightly later to the party.
Yeah, well, thank you for this.